If you could speak to all world leaders publicly and offer them guidance and words of wisdom, what would you say to them today?
If I could do it publicly?
Yeah.
Oh my God. Number one, work out your family problems first. The person you're married to. Learn to live with that person better and realize your problem is all over the world and you're not solving it if you don't solve it at home first. So do it, and whatever you learn there, use it with the other political people you don't agree with. Remember, your opponent is a part of yourself you've known for a long time and haven't worked on. And it won't help to kill them. They'll still be there. That's one of the big things I've learned. You can't kill the opponent. It's always there, inside you and outside. If you don't work your inner stuff out, you won't be as good a leader as you could be. I know that for sure.
Anything else you would tell them?
Remember, you're not the boss. But the deepest part of the people who voted for you and you're dreaming are the boss. And say that you support the people and you support the deepest dreams to help make a better world. That's what I would like them to be able to. One or two have said that in little ways earlier. Temporarily, at least, it was good.
So I have a question coming out of that. Is our larger purpose to eradicate war?
Our biggest job is not to eradicate war, but to learn how to conflict in a way that improves relationships. War is a sign that our relationship ability has not been working very well. So let's learn to relate better. Just being big and powerful is okay, but not enough. That would be my suggestion.
How did you come to develop the concept of deep democracy?
Oh my God, what a question. Wow. Deep democracy, how did I come to develop it? Well, I like democracy, but I didn't notice anybody following it. Democracy is this group is okay and that's okay. They weren't very good at following. Deeper democracies, get deeper in yourself, follow the dreaming process with others, in relationships, follow the dreaming in your relationship, watch your signals, and in conflict, go deeper, and even go deeper to the essence level. Bring all of your psychology to conflict work. I love it. And it worked.
When you said like democracy, I like democracy, but democracy didn't work. What do you mean?
The idea that all people are equal is beautiful. I just love it. Ha, ha, ha. No one else loves it. People think the other group is good for nothing. Let's kill them. I realized democracy was not working anywhere. And so let's make all the various feelings and signals valuable in a deeper democracy. Learn even how to switch roles with the person you can't stand. And I promise you life will be a lot better for everybody. Like Amy and I, we really haven't had a fight. What is it, 20 years? 22 years, yeah, as I said. Because if we ever have any tension, I try to feel into her side, and I do that with everybody. You have a lot of fun in your relationships then. Fighting becomes boring and stupid.
Do you remember the last fight you had with Amy?
Last fight?
22 years ago? Do you remember what it was?
I was trying to convince her that she shouldn't hate herself, and she had an argument about that with me. Something like that many, many years ago.
Going back to what you just shared about learning how to navigate conflict through relationships.
Yes,
right?
yes.
People that know nothing about process work, they haven't developed skills of awareness, they haven't studied process work. What can each of them do in like a concrete way as a beginning step for working on conflict in a relationship?
Well, first take their side. That's the biggest thing. Don't be too shy about saying everything. And then don't kid yourself. The other person is a part of you are not getting along with. Wake up and know them better in yourself. Then go back and work on the conflict. That's what I would say.
If I saw the other person's not me, the other person's disgusting.
Wonderful. How disgusting are they?
So I almost can't even speak about it. They disgust me as a human being. They're evil. They're gross.
Show me how gross and stupid and evil they are. Just
Tell you?
Tell me, show me.
Well, they think they're really like better than everyone. They don't take anyone into consideration.
Yeah.
They try to destroy the environment.
I want you to be more out there in the world and louder than you normally are. Bring your ideas and feelings out more, and you'll have less conflict.
So I should just be like them.
Be like that energy.
Energy.
The energy of somebody mixes you up and upsets you only if it's something you've already repressed. Otherwise, you'll say to them, oh, I know you in myself. Hi. And you won't have many conflicts, I promise. Well, I was in Zurich, Switzerland, studying physics, and then I wanted to work on myself and wanted to go to the analyst called Marie-Louise von Franz, and she had to wait a couple of weeks, so I went to one of Jung's grandchildren, Dieter Baumann, for analysis to begin with. And then at one point we became very friendly. He said, let's visit Jung's house in Bollingen. And so he and I went there and we opened the door.
The stone.
Little stone house, and we opened the door. I went in and I saw this funny book called the Tao Te Ching on where he had lived and where he had eaten on his little table.
Mm.
That's how I started to practice and learn about Taoism from Jung's book that he left behind.
Right. And what was it about Taoism that was so fascinating or
Taoism for me is very, very, very close to physics. Nobody knows that. It's about what's happening. It's about throwing a coin, for example, and watching it. That's the essence of process work. Watching what's happening spontaneously and following it. So Taoism, from Jung and Tao, came process work.
Wow. Beautiful.
Yeah.
Yeah. And that just went on. It soaked into every aspect. There's so many aspects of process work.
I love Taoism and I still love it, but behind process work is the idea something meaningful is trying to arise through spontaneous events, not just dreams at night.
So you took Jung's teleology, the idea that things are meaningful in dreams, more to
Went further
many.
with all of life, yeah.
Beautiful. I know that there's so many aspects that you developed of process work, and one of them was the whole area of extreme states. And I'm just wondering if you want to say something about how you got involved in that. I know that some psychiatrists or something asked you to come in and help with some people who were in so-called psychotic states, but you call them extreme states.
Well, when I studied at the Jung Institute, you were not supposed to work with people who were psychotic or semi-psychotic. So I thought, well, that doesn't sound right. They're people. So I started working with everybody. And that's how I began to do it. And then I got known for that. And the police found out that I could do things like that too. So that once in Switzerland, they brought a so-called psychotic patient to me. And he had been on the street screaming about the light that would be coming and making a lot of noise about it. To make it brief, he got really troublesome with everybody and the police had to pick him up. They brought him to me. The so-called crazy guy said, "The light is coming." So I said, "Turn it on. You're in the darkness." "What do you mean? You don't see what you're doing. Wake up to the light that you are. Be more intelligent, for God's sakes." He heard me. They didn't bring him to a psychiatric institution afterwards. They brought him to a doctor to check out. He came out of his so-called psychotic state and realized he wanted to be more light and enlightened.
You were saying you believed in that was meaningful. It wasn't just that he was crazy or...
There's no such thing as crazy to me. There's just process. Whether someone is living or dying, living and dying are good terms. But for me, everything is process. Follow it as best you can. Follow the process as well as medicine and all the others. You'll process first, is the point. And most people, many people may not need psychiatric institutions. Some will not. I put it very conservatively, yeah.
I'm still thinking about all these different areas of process work that bloomed out of these basic ideas, one of which is you worked a lot with children.
Yeah.
And I think developed some relationship to a pediatrician, or I remember you told an example of working with a child who spit all the time or something, a Swiss
Oh.
child.
And they couldn't stop him. Stop spitting, you little monster. And he wouldn't. So I said to the mother and father, please spit a little bit. Just a little
They should spit.
tiny bit. Pooh, like that. And it did, it began to help them to bring stuff out in their relationship,
Oh.
which was very helpful.
Mm-hmm.
They got all excited and told their child doctor, pediatrician, and then I had too many kids to work. But anyhow,
That helped the child.
yeah, the
child stopped spitting.
right away.
Right.
He saw the mother and father spit. He smiled. And then they started arguing, and he got bored and started to play with a toy on the floor. It's very good.
There's so many more stories, but anyway, that's great.
Working with people is a lot of
I
fun
love working with kids too.
with everybody.
Tell us a little bit about your work with people near death or people in coma states and how you developed that work.
Well, I met people who got sick when I was in Switzerland and went into comas and what have you. Thought, why doesn't psychology work with somebody who's rolling around in a coma? They're still people. So I started with a client of mine who went into a coma. I worked with her, amplifying her symptoms in bed as she moved around a little bit. And she rolled over on the floor. And with other doctors and nurses watching, I didn't come close to her, but I rolled on the floor at another point in the hospital room. And believe it or not, there was an amazing woman. After a few minutes, she said, "Oh, you're moving with me." Soon she got out of the hospital later, became a great leader in Switzerland later on. Follow the dreaming process.
What did the doctors and nurses think as they watched you working with her?
Well, the nurses and doctors, some of them were freaking out and said, "No, not on the floor." But the doctors, that two of them knew me, said, "Shh, just watch him and see what happens." And the person really who was in a coma awakened out of a comatose state, had been very sick. Later became a very nice friend of mine, a wonderful woman. Mm-hmm.
So that work evolved more, working with patients in comas.
Working with patients in all states of consciousness, following the body, listening carefully, of course, and encouraging it to be more conscious, awakens people out of coma a lot sooner.
What
Wow.
about people that are on their way to dying?
Oh, if they're on the way to dying, I say, let's let go and die and let go. And the concept of death is totally wrong, because just recently I worked with a man who was dying, and I said, let's die together. And he started on a little boat trip, having a good time. And yes, he died physically later. Shortly thereafter, he was in pretty bad shape physically. But do people really die? I'll leave that an open question. I don't think so, myself, from what
What do
I've
you
seen.
think happens?
I think you are a dream trying to realize itself looking like a person. And the person is there, very important. And the person will die in time. But the dream is timeless.
Were there moments for you in your life when you felt despair along your journey?
Despair, misery, depression.
Yeah. And maybe dreams that helped you at that time?
I was always following my dreaming process, and as a result, I can never remember being depressed for more than about a half an hour at any point. Because if you're depressed, I love it. Just go deeper inside and let the dreaming move you. So depression has never been for me a very interesting thing, except for the dreaming that comes out of it.
You talk about nature is my goddess.
Yes.
The whales and the mountains and the sea.
Yes.
And Amy have been your main teachers.
Yes.
I want to know, what have they each taught you? What are the biggest lessons the whales taught you, the mountains taught you, the sea taught you, and Amy taught you?
The biggest lesson Amy has taught me is how to love even better. She's a really loving creature. So I learned that from her. And from the whales in the sea, what have they taught me? To follow not just my everyday mind, but like the sea goes up and down, to follow the gravity effects of the moon in the evening, and let the sun come in the day, follow the process of life. That's what I've learned from them. Life is a process, let's join it consciously.
Can you say more about your development, about process-oriented detachment? What does it mean, and how is it different from spiritual forms of detachment?
Well, it's very similar, except if you're a process person and feel more detached, you can fight better and enjoy it and do all sorts of things that so-called spiritual people usually don't get mixed up with. You won't be afraid to go on the street and join conflicts and help them by singing and screaming on both sides, or all by yourself across the street, to help the world.
How did you develop that kind of detachment?
I'm not detached, I'm just empirical. I notice they're fighting, let's bring it out, study it, encourage it to be more conscious. It's easy. Now it's easy for me, yeah. Wherever I see a conflict, I jump in. I'm on this side, I'm on that side, and I help them flow between the sides.
Before you die, Arny, is there anything that you would like to see manifest about process work?
The way it's going is good. I'd like to see more people using it, watching their signals in public, and they are learning to do that all over the world. There's now many centers worldwide. I just like them to use it better, as much as possible. And dislike it, hate it, and then offer changes to it. Process work is a process. That's what I like about it. It's not just right. It can be wrong, but in the process of developing. Not like a psychology where everything is known and done. Writing is none of my business. I don't write. I listen to something that wants to speak through me. I can't write. It does it. If I write, it's boring to me. So I always listen. What is it inside of me that wants to express itself on this subject or that subject? Then I can correct it. Otherwise, what I write is too boring for me.
When you sit down to write, like when you wrote The Shaman's Body,
Yeah.
how did that come through you? Can you share a little bit?
I read Castaneda and Tan Juan about shamanism, and I was sitting alone in the mountains at the time. And suddenly, I began to write my first book, The Shaman's Body. Stuff started pouring out of me into the typewriter. I had ideas about shamanism and Carlos Castaneda and what a shaman is. And that was my first discovery that writing was something that wanted to happen in me. That's behind those 20-some books that I've done.
Do you usually write a book in a very fast period of time?
Altered state. I think, what do I want to say? Okay, now relax and see what it says. That's how I write. And it doesn't tire me out so much.
If I never knew Arnold Mindell before today, and I watched whatever this will be at the end, and I think, oh wow, I want to like read what he's written. So I'm going to ask you a question. And just whatever comes to your mind. If I was a doctor or a scientist, what book do you think I should start with that you've written?
Probably The Dream Body, very early book. Talks about dreams and how they appear in body symptoms. So simple and elementary and something that needs to be learned by all medical people, that our symptoms are dreams trying to awaken us.
And if I'm a politician, what book should I start with?
If you're a politician, what book? World books would be good. Any book on world work would be fine, yeah.
Like?
Sitting in the Fire.
And I'm a high school student.
You shouldn't read. Look at this video of Arny talking to Cathy.
What about if I'm a teacher or a coach or a therapist? What should I read first?
If you're going to be a teacher or a coach or a therapist, read the Tao Te Ching first.
Well, you didn't write the Tao Te Ching.
No, but it's one of my favorite things that I follow in process work. And then, to begin with, why not read Dream Body, my first book?
If I'm a tradesperson, I'm a plumber, I'm a carpenter, or I'm a tailor, what should I start with?
Don't read a book. Remember just the sentence. Notice your dreams and try to feel how they are influencing you during the day and in relationships. Forget books.
How did your journey as a father inform you about life, the universe, and everything else.
Well, if you follow the babies, they were really cute. You learn that the baby is following something very deep. It's like relationship work in general. You follow yourself, you follow the child, and things go along pretty well then. I just loved it. When I first was at the Jung Institute and I had a conflict there with the other teachers and was going to a meeting to work on that conflict, my daughter, who was 3 at that time, Laura, I was in the bathroom worried about the conflict that was going to try to help with at the Jung Institute in Switzerland. And Laura, my daughter, came in. What are you so upset about? The conflict, I said, between these two roles in that Jungian group. That's no problem, she said. All you gotta do is yell on this side and then yell on that side. She was right and very good. Not quite enough, but kids are really bright and smart and love to be helpful if you appreciate them enough.
She was like a little world worker at the moment.
Everybody is, even though we don't notice it in them usually. All children. Mm-hmm.
Do you have any other stories like that about your kids when you think about moments growing up with them?
Many, many, many fun little moments. But, oh yeah, Amy said I myself was wild and very playful. And I even put the kids, when I was driving the car in a little tiny Swiss town, I put them on the roof of the car in the rack area, which was safe, and drove about 2 or 3 miles an hour, a little bit, and they enjoyed it in just about a block or 2. It's a lot of fun. And I brought them to seminars, and they had fun. We were all wild and playful.
Did you have a relationship with your grandparents? Were your grandparents alive when you were growing up?
My grandmother on my mother's side, and my father's father had just died. My grandmothers on both sides, I had a little bit of a relationship to, yes. My grandfather on my mother's side died in the First World War, during the war, in a trench during the war fighting, and wrote to my mother from the trench that she had to now be the father. And so, war, family, all of this is in the background of me wanting to help the world.
How about being a grandpa?
You've always been a grandma and grandpa, with grandchildren and without them. And when they come along, you just play with them. And the same with everything and everybody. We're all grandpas and grandmas. All the time.
What are your dreams about the present?
Let's learn to get along with all the parts of ourselves and learn to flow better in relationships and conflict to reduce war, which will help the whole human race live a little longer without the carbon footprint of bombs and what have you. As a human race, we're going to die in 100 years. But if we learn to work on conflict better, there will be less war. less bombs, and people will be more conscious how to live with less energy. It will be better for the whole human race.
What is your highest and your lowest dream about humanity?
My greatest dream and hope for the human race is to realize probably in 100 years, because of the changing oxygen levels on this planet, chances are most people won't be able to live here in a good 100, surely 120 years. So, one of the biggest jobs for the human race is to learn to integrate death. Even if you're really young, let go and let the dreaming move you. Integrate death. And in that way, we'll be able to get along together, use less energy, less war and fighting, and we'll be more conscious of the way we abuse energy also in cars and stuff like that.
How do you learn how to integrate death?
You die when you think of it and you say, death is coming. You're over 50 years old, or over 40 for some people. You're gonna die. Yippee! Let go until you feel not you, but something else moves you. That's a way of integrating death. Letting go and joining the dreaming world.
And if people can do that, then what?
They feel better about everything. They have less conflict, and actually working with people right near death. I do that too with them. Let's integrate and play with what you're dreaming. And in a way, people almost always experience themselves as not really dying in the conventional sense. But the dreaming part of us is apparently timeless.
So you're now 81, moving closer to 82, right?
Yeah, I'll be 82 in a month or two, yeah.
Each year on your birthday, you've had this tradition of interpreting people's dreams over like a 24 or 48 hour period.
I have.
How did that develop into a gift that you give the world like that?
I thought, well, it's the new year. Who the hell are you? Where are you going? Let's wake up, world, to letting the dreaming help us live a better life. So that's how I began it, just wondering about those things. And it works, it's fun, it was fun, yeah.
It's really fun to take part in those, yeah.
Thank you, Cathy.
When your body's no longer around physically in physical form, how do you think your dreaming will go on, will live on?
Through people that I love, it will be, they'll think of me as if I'm a dream figure. Like I think of C.G. Jung, he's going on inside of me. I love him. He still motivates and does things for me. And everybody else that will happen with too. So we will die, and maybe not completely. Who we are is a spirit that doesn't have a time associated with us.
How do you want to be remembered?
Remember, I don't care if someone dislikes me. I hope they hate me. That'll be good.
Say that again, Arny?
If people don't like me, that would be fine if they dislike me. And those that remember me should listen in their ears to the dreams, what I have to say. Maybe they'll pick up some messages and carry it on. I'll die, and I don't think so, not quite. The average age of life for men here in the United States is 77. So I'm over that, and I love it. I love aging. It's just, again, process. And do we really die from what I've seen, all the people that I see? As I said before, yes, the physical body will die, though mine is still pretty good, running around and stuff. But no, I'm interested in dreaming and getting into people's dreams to believe in themselves more. That's my goal. That's how to love yourself. Believe in who you are and what you do.
I've heard so many people, Arny, talk about aging, and it's rare to hear somebody say what you just said. I love
it.
What do you love about aging,
Wow, when you get older, you can't fight so good like you used to, and you can, and you do. But what's the best thing about aging is it forces you to start thinking about death. And I love that. Do we die? Awakening your ideas about, my ideas about death and what's life all about. That's what I love about aging. And for some reason, I can still do just about everything I've always done. So I'm not aging that much, but I will age and die and also not die.
What do you feel is the reason that you can do most of what you've always done? Because a lot of people stop being able to do what they always did as they age. What do you credit that to?
Dreaming while awake. I've always followed not just my conscious mind, which is good, but dreaming. And that allows me to step outside of aging, of young and old, male and female, this country. And dreaming opens me up to the infinite and gives me lots of fun and energy.
What is death to you at your age right now?
I like it. I'm not against it. Death means dying, but dreaming doesn't stop. And from what I know about people who die just before death, all of them dream about something about going on afterwards. So I'm not so sure the whole of us dies. I must have told you and many people a bunch of times. My first client was 30, had bad cancer, and he was dying. And he dreamed and came to see me for the dream work that he was by his grave, his coffin, and nobody saw him dancing around the coffin. They thought he was only in the coffin. The concept of death is good. You're going to die, take care of everything, blah, blah, blah. And think about 100 years into the future and get started on it now. Work on yourself as if you're going to be around, not physically in this form, but as if you're going to be around a long time yet. Because I think you are.